Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Davis and you're watching Fight News Now Extra. We're getting to all sorts of newsmakers next as Anthony Pettis is back in the hospital. King Mo Lawal compares pro wrestling to MMA and two regional MMA promotions join hands. Our MMA panel well joined to break it all down, so let's get started with our headlines. Last week, we told you that Anthony Pettis had sprained the shoulder he had surgery on earlier this year, and now it looks like his bad luck has doubled. Pettis has been admitted to a hospital in Milwaukee with a staph infection in his elbow. It's not expected to be too serious, and Pettis will still fight Donald "Cowboy" Cerrone, but probably not until the end of January. Just a couple weeks ago, former Strikeforce light heavyweight champion King Mo Lawal made his pro wrestling debut with TNA. Now he's come out saying that training for pro wrestling is 3 times harder than training for MMA because of all the psychology, the bumps, the positioning, and cutting promos. Here's a look at King Mo's debut.
Strikeforce light heavyweight champ, 3-time U.S. Senior National Wrestling champ, NCAA Division II National champ.
Crazy. Keep his hands off this guy.
King Mo face to face with Bobby Roode.
What are you going to do about it, huh? What do you think you're going to do about it? King Mo, you want a piece of this, huh? You think you're so badass, huh? You think you're...
Oh!
Not bad. And 2 regional MMA promotions have joined forces. MMA manager Ed Soares recently announced that Resurrection Fighting Alliance, the promotion he's the president of, is merging with Titan Fighting Promotions. Now both companies will be under the RFA umbrella, and the next card will be November 2nd in Las Vegas. That's the latest from the MMA world. Now let's hear from our MMA panel, John Ramdeen and Robin Black. And guys, Anthony Pettis, staph infection in the elbow. How is this going to affect his fight with Cowboy?
Well, for fight fans, I think they're very disappointed because when you look at the lightweight division, Anthony Pettis and Donald Cerrone, 2 of the most exciting fighters in the weight class, and I know fans are dying to see these guys go at it.
Yeah, I think this fight's still going to happen. You know, staph infection can be a bad thing, but I think he's all right. But yeah, we got to see this one.
Anthony Pettis does hold a victory over current UFC lightweight champion Ben Henderson, and we know that Ben Henderson also making news recently, saying that he's willing to go from 155 pounds up to 170 pounds, something that we don't see a whole lot of. We see a lot of fighters going from a weight class and dropping weight, but maybe this is a new trend.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, John. You fight for a living, and you fight guys that are, how big are you, about 300? You fight guys that are 300 pounds. Hey, I got an idea. Why don't you fight guys that are 350? People don't want to do that. They want to fight smaller men. They want to drop down in weight. And, of course, I'm kidding. John Ramdeen has lost about 60 pounds recently. But guys want to drop down in weight. They want to fight smaller men. They want to fight theoretically easier fights. But Ben Henderson is still growing. He's a young, athletic dude, and he's got that fast twitch muscle. And for some guys, as they train, they continue to put on weight, eating a ton of protein, training a lot. So this guy is starting to have a hard time cutting the weight, you know, and it's hard on the body. If he fights at 170 pounds, he may perform even better, which is scary.
The champion at 170 pounds, St Pierre, we know all the talk over the last number of years about the super fight between him and Anderson Silva. He said he is willing to take this fight, but it's going to take 4 extra months because he has to build up that mass naturally or the best way that he can. It's not just a matter of gaining the weight, it's gaining it properly. And he says if he makes that move, it could be a move that he stays with permanently.
Yeah, I mean, you don't just go up in weight and drop weight. I mean, in boxing, you can move a weight class in a couple of pounds. We're talking about from 70 to 185, that's 15 pounds. And 15 pounds isn't 15 pounds in MMA because you got to cut weight, you got to drop and regain. That could be a 20-pound gain. Human beings do not gain 20 pounds of lean muscle when they're already athletic. So it's going to be interesting. All this talk about weight is really interesting because Anderson Silva is kind of alluding to the fact that he'd rather fight St Pierre. Of course he would. St Pierre is smaller than John Jones, the other possible fighter.
Robin, when we look at what's going on in the landscape of mixed martial arts, I think this is a very good move. Ben Henderson thinking about 170 pounds. I think what you have to do is you have to go with your stars. If that means they fight at 155 pounds, make the best matchup possible at 155 pounds. If they get a fight at 170 that makes sense, give it to them. That's what it comes down to. If there are no challenges left for Anderson Silva at 185 pounds and 205 pounds, sounds enticing, makes sense, and you can sell a lot of pay-per-views, I say go with it.
Yeah, man, we're looking at Chael Sonnen versus Jon Jones. Chael Sonnen has been a 205er, but he's had his best success at 185. He's making this fight because he's going to make some money. We're all going to watch lots of pay-per-views, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I agree with you entirely. And, I mean, if Pettis ends up fighting at 155 and you'd rather fight at 170, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you've got all these options. It makes for more options.
One guy that we know for years talked about 155 pounds and possibly dropping down to 145 pounds. He says it wasn't going to happen. Frankie Edgar, the former 155-pound champion, finally warmed up to the fact that maybe featherweight would be his best option. Of course, that fight with Jose Aldo not happening for the time being, but I think these guys need an option because really the UFC is hurting for stars right now.
Yeah, for sure, and you make a great point. If you're hurting for stars, put them where you need them. I mean, yeah, you and I are probably two of the biggest champions for this sport as a pure sport, where we want to see the best athletes fight each other. But you also understand sometimes we just want to see fights. And all this talk of weight sounds like a lot of numbers, but it makes a lot of sense when you put the best guys in the best places. And like I said, John Ramdina's lost, speaking of weight, lost 60 pounds. Congratulations, brother.
Thanks so much, Robin. But it comes down to the most exciting fights. What fights can be sold to the casual fans? And I think it just comes down to putting these guys up in interesting fights, and I think everything else will work itself out. Sarah Davis, what about you? Do you think you'd be more interested in seeing Anderson Silva fight George St Pierre or moving up to 205 pounds to fight Jon Jones?
I want to see the Jon Jones fight.
Never ask a woman about weight, John.
You guys both look good, by the way. All right, so you're watching the extra edition of Fight News Now. Don't forget that we have Fight News Now, the MMA edition, every Wednesday evening starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we take you through the breaking news, 3 rounds with John and Robin, and we go outside of the cage on the shift. So make sure you tune in, and you can always check our schedule on our website at fightnetwork.com. Up next, we have a recap of Bellator 77.